Welcome to part 6 of Justin Baldoni's October 6th deposition. Shaw. Okay, I want to talk about the period of time when you were filming It Ends With Us, and I want to talk about conversations you had directly with Stephanie Jones during the filming. Okay, do you recall any conversations that you had directly with Stephanie Jones during filming? I remember she came to visit me on set, which was lovely. Outside of that, I can't recall any moments right now. Do you recall any calls that you had with her during filming where you were concerned or upset about any incidents that had happened on set? Right now I don't. Is it possible that there may have been calls between you and her during filming that you just don't recall right now? Shapiro, objection. Justin, may I ask a clarifying question? Shaw, sure. Do you mean just me and Stephanie Jones? No, I mean between you and Stephanie Jones, whether or not there were other people on the call. Oh, so then I misunderstood. Oh, sure, okay. I do remember a call with me, Stephanie Jones, Jen Abel, and I believe Jamey Heath and myself. Okay, tell me what you remember about that. I don't remember when it was. I remember giving them an update on what my experience was like filming the movie. I remember sharing some of the moments of conflict that I had with Miss Lively, just how difficult this movie was. I don't remember it being a long conversation. I remember her responses. I don't remember how long the conversation was. What do you remember about her responses? I remember laughing because she got very protective of me and said things that I will not repeat on camera about Miss Lively and things she's heard about her and Mr. Reynolds. And she talked about a lot about Mr. Reynolds and how terrible he was. And she kind of like was acting like a mama bear. Don't mess with. And I remember that because she was approaching it like she's been around for a long time. So she knows the inside scoop. She's been a publicist for so long. And I think she represented The Rock, and she had said on that call that Mr. Reynolds had like terrorized The Rock or something to that extent. Something about a letter. I don't remember the details, but something like he had written a letter and it was like they wouldn't do press together. I don't know. It was a lot of gossip, but that's why I remember laughing because I was like, oh, did you feel supported by her on that call? Yeah, as I said earlier, it kind of felt like, oh, don't worry, she's this and that. It will be fine. The movie's going to come out and it will be awesome. And everybody's had a bad experience with her. It was like that kind of call. And did you feel like she believed what you were relaying to her about your experiences on set? Yes, I don't remember sharing much, but what I did share, I just shared the truth. And she said, yeah. What do you remember sharing with her about your experiences on set? I specifically remember sharing the situation with our trainer and asking him what he thought Miss Lively might weigh when we shot the scene where I had to pick her up because of my back, and how they confronted me the next day, and how their trainer evidently then went and told her that I was asking about her weight or something, and then how that became this big thing, and they sat me down, and I just remember her kind of not being able to believe that was even a thing. I believe I shared with her that I had made a comment about the way Jenny Slate looked in her wardrobe, and then I used the word sexy, and I think she started responding by joking about how, again, I don't want to, if it's okay, repeat the words that she said, but generalizing the women and their fragility. And then I think I talked about the wardrobe and how hard it was with the wardrobe, and just that it felt like it was just a very hard experience. Like, that's kind of what I remember. Do you remember sharing with her anything else regarding your experiences on set in that call? I remember sharing how proud I was of the movie, but that it was just really hard. But that I was like really proud of the work. We hadn't talked in a long time, so it was kind of like I hadn't talked to Jen either. It was just a check-in about everything. Do you recall sharing with her anything else about the conflicts that you were having with Miss Lively on the set? Right now I don't recall. Do you recall how that call came about? No. Do you know whether you had asked for it? I don't. Okay, do you recall her providing any guidance to you around being more sensitive to the optics with a woman like Miss Lively who had just given birth with respect to the weight question or anything like that? Shapiro, objection. Justin, no, the opposite. She jumped right into putting Miss Lively down and talking about her reputation. Shaw, did you record that call? No. Do you know if Jamey recorded that call? I don't. Do you know if Jen Abel recorded that call? I don't. Do you think she had any reason to disbelieve what you were telling her on that call? I can't speak to what she might believe or not believe. Do you recall whether or not she had recently had major surgery within the week or two before that call? I remember her having surgery, and I don't remember what the surgery was, but anytime someone in my life has a surgery, I would always reach out. And I'm very into like health, and I have a health coach or had, and biohacking and things. So I think I probably reached out and offered if there was any way I could be of service to her. Do you recall any urgency around getting on the phone with her from your side to discuss these issues with her? Like I said, I really don't remember the context or when the call was or anything like that. Okay, Other than this one call that we've been talking about, do you recall having any other calls with Stephanie Jones during filming, whether or not there were other people on it? I don't. Do you recall, are you sure that you didn't have any other calls, or you just don't remember one way or another? I have no memory of any other calls, but if you have a phone log where we talked or something, I would be happy to change that. I don't have any memory of another phone call with Stephanie. I mostly talked to Jennifer Abel, and I didn't speak to Jennifer Abel very often during the filming. How often would you say you spoke with Jennifer Abel during the filming outside of the presence of Stephanie Jones? Only if there was something that she wanted me to promote, or if there was anything that we were doing for the movie, but I don't have any specific memories right now. Do you recall ever having any conversations with Jennifer Abel outside the presence of Stephanie Jones, where you relate to Jennifer Abel anything about your on-set experiences or difficulties you were having with Miss Lively during filming? I don't remember. I feel left out of the note-taking. Sorry, I'm just joking. You previously, I don't know if you still do, hosted a podcast called Man Enough. Is that right? That is correct. What is the conception behind the Man Enough podcast in your own words? What is the conception, meaning how was it conceived? Sure, let's start there. The Man Enough podcast was originally going to be an accompanying podcast to a book that I had released years ago called Man Enough. And what was that book about? The book was about my own journey to redefine and undefine what masculinity was for myself. And can you describe that journey for me briefly here? Do you want me to describe my whole book journey briefly? Is it possible? I'm happy to try. I just don't know what briefly is. I'm just trying to understand what was the idea behind that book and the podcast. Well, the book was really a self-exploration of looking at all the unconscious messages that I've taken on as a man, but more importantly, as human in my life, all the mistakes I've made, the social constructs and kind of invisible scripts that I maybe have been living by that I wasn't even aware of, and putting them in a form that I was hopeful could help other men. And the podcast, I think, was, to answer your question, was a way to have a conversation around those same topics that oftentimes were uncomfortable, so that we could have something for men outside of the book. Did the book or the podcast deal with notions of toxic masculinity? Was that part of it? I actually say in the book that I don't like to use the phrase toxic masculinity, so I will answer your question no. But I think that would be more of a perception based on who was listening. What phrase do you prefer than toxic masculinity, or why do you not like using that phrase? As I wrote about, I think that phrase toxic masculinity was inherently divisive. I believed it became political, and a lot of men felt attacked by the use of the word. And I didn't feel that it made any sense to use a term that would immediately make men defensive, especially because those were the very men that I wanted to reach. And I also don't believe that masculinity is inherently toxic. I never have. I was very proud to be a man. I never felt like I needed to apologize for being a man. And I know that was something that was going around a lot with the phrase toxic masculinity. And that said, there were a lot of people that maybe kind of lumped in this idea that because I was doing a podcast and writing a book about masculinity, that I was saying that masculinity was toxic. But generally, those were people that didn't read my book or listen to the podcast. I just wanted to help men embrace all the parts of them that made them human. That also means that stuff that sucks and that you never want to look at, and that maybe you've been hiding or you don't even realize you're hiding. And it was just about confronting those parts of ourselves and just holding ourselves accountable to try to be better men. I'm sorry, that wasn't very brief. It's all right, and you'll forgive me if I'm using the wrong terminology around this stuff, but feel free to use whatever you think are the appropriate words. But you said a lot. Yeah, when you said that, the stuff that sucks that you never want to look at, or maybe you've been hiding or you don't even realize you've been hiding, can you give me some examples of what kind of stuff you're talking about? Sure, I mean, a lot of men deal with shame. Suicide among men is increasing yearly, and many more men take their own lives than women. And there's a belief in, and I don't say this as an expert, this is just from my own research and experience, there's a belief in this specific world that this happens because men don't have a support system, because men have been taught to not share their pain and their trauma, because it's oftentimes used against them and weaponized against them by both men and women. So an example could be a man that was abused as a child who never spoke to anybody about it. In this case, I will give you an example of a man that was maybe abused by an older man, but this man identifies as being heterosexual, but because he was abused by an older man, struggles with the abuse itself and being taken advantage of. But also the fact that he was abused by a man. He's also questioning his sexuality or his gender. And also there's a preconceived notion that as a man, you don't want to go to therapy because it makes you less of a man. So perhaps this man didn't get the help that he needed, and he was, as we say, suffering in silence, and he didn't know who to reach out to. And instead, the man took out all of these feelings of shame and unworthiness and confusion about what happened to him and blamed himself and would take that out on other people. And maybe other men, maybe other women, maybe this man himself became an abuser. And the whole idea is that this is something that as a man you would find embarrassing and shameful because it's not something that is socially accepted or acceptable to talk about. So the hope was to normalize getting the help you need to normalize vulnerability. Let men know that they're not alone and that there is all kinds of examples of these types of things. I'm happy to name another one if you want me to. And again, this is just a hypothetical man, and many of these men end up eventually taking their own lives, and that breaks my heart, and hurting women in the process, which also breaks my heart. Did any of your work on the podcast or in this book around this time of Man Enough have to do with gender norms or gender relations as between men and women? I mean, I think the entire book was inherently about gender and masculinity specifically, but as I said in the book, I'm not an expert, and the book was much more my personal journey and trying to use as many anecdotes and stories that I could find in my life to point men to a direction of maybe them being able to look at themselves. I'm sure some of that it was discussed either on the podcast or in the book, or just this is a large conversation. And my book was meant to just be a tiny little piece of a personal journey mostly meant for men, but as we know, many women read it and then gave it to their men. Have you seen reporting around you that identifies you as an ally of women or a feminist ally? I would say so, yeah. Do you believe yourself to be an ally of women or a feminist ally? I certainly have attempted to be. You're aware of the Me Too movement, I'm assuming. I am. Are you aware of an idea that came out of the Me Too movement that one should believe women? Both believe women when they speak out about misconduct against them? Yes, I'm aware. Do you agree with that idea? I think that is a very nuanced question that I can't give you a yes or no answer to. Are you aware of something called the He Too movement? No, but I can imagine what it is. It's essentially a response to the Me Too movement about men who believe they've been falsely accused by women of misconduct. Shapiro, is that a question? Justin, oh, then no, I don't know what that is. Okay, what did you think it was? Shapiro, objection. I actually thought it was like him too, like he also has been sexually harassed or sexually assaulted. Because oftentimes people think men can't be sexually harassed or assaulted and that it's only women. But I think that if we're talking about equality, it's important to create room for men to be able to share their experience of sexual harassment or assault. Because I believe 1 in 5 men have been sexually assaulted, which is a pretty big number. But again, not as an expert, just as something I've read. So that's what I thought you were meaning about him too. Shah, are you aware of or have you been following a lot of the commentary about you on social media since this lawsuit began in general? I've had very long breaks where I didn't. And then there have been times I feel like I need to know what's happening and I go look. Unfortunately, people don't necessarily respect boundaries and people send me a lot of things. So I have to constantly ask people to not send me things. But there have been many months where I have not been following, and there's been months where I have. Have you seen that online, at least, you've become in certain circles kind of a hero or a figurehead of the MAGA movement? No, I don't mean to laugh, but you've never seen anything like that? No, I didn't. I didn't know where you were going with it, but I didn't think you were going with that. All right, I'm not going to ask you about your political affiliation. I don't have a red hat. Bach, you've asked about everything else. Shaw, I don't care about that one. Justin, is that true? That's all right. You just surprised me there. Shapiro, can I time out? How much time do we have left, Mr. Videographer? Videographer, we're at 6 hours and 40 minutes. Shapiro, is that all? Are you sure? Justin, I'm sorry. Shaw, so you've not seen the legions of MAGA supporters who have come out in support of you on social media? No? Okay. That's very surprising. And you're not aware that you have a very pro-MAGA fan base on social media? You're making me aware. Are these like the Make America Great Again red hat people? That's what I mean, yes. Is there anything you want to show me? That's like, not right now, no. I just didn't know if you had been following this during the course of this lawsuit. Maybe I should. Are you aware that on social media you've also become some like a poster boy for the He Too movement, meaning that, as I said, I wasn't aware of what a He Too meant. And by He Too, I mean a movement around the idea of men being falsely accused of sexual misconduct by women. So was I aware that I was a poster boy for the He Too movement? I was not. Okay, as I said, I didn't know what I thought he too meant something else. Other than the term he too, are you aware that during the course of the lawsuit, you've become kind of a hero or poster boy for this idea of men being falsely accused by women? No. Hero it's a very strong word. Shapiro, looks like you're on your last page. You don't have to use all 7 hours, you know. Just, Justin, we're here. Shaw, do you know what the manosphere is? If I use that word? I do know what the manosphere is. That is one I do know. What do you understand by that term? The manosphere, to my understanding, it was like an alt-right movement that took place on or in parts of the web, which I don't know, maybe Reddit or some places that kind of like bred this idea that men are victims and created, I don't know the exact term, but like these cells of men who like take out their anger on women. Are you aware that during the course of these lawsuits, you've also become kind of a hero to the manosphere? I'm learning all kinds of new things today, so thank you. I can see that. No, I don't know where the manosphere is, nor do I know where to find that information. But I hope that people in the manosphere, if they do think of me as a hero, would then go read my book. Because I think that could then maybe, I always wanted to get the book into the manosphere. This is a weird way to do it, and I don't mean that like as a joke. Like, that was always a thing that we had talked about is how do we reach the men in the manosphere? So maybe God is laughing right now. Is the manosphere a movement that you want to be associated with? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I think I just answered your question. No, I'm not meaning to laugh at you. It's just no, absolutely not. Like I said, I absolutely would want them to read my books and give my books for boys to their young boys. Because all of my work is about helping men actually do the opposite of my understanding of what the manosphere is, which is to not to take your anger and aggression out that you have in the world out onto women and the women of your life, and to go to therapy and to not harbor the anger and the resentment and to get it out of your body and to, yeah, so maybe some good will come out of this if they are reading my stuff. Shaw, do you know whether during the course of the lawsuit, anyone on your team has been stoking these constituencies in your favor on social media? Shapiro, objection. And I'm just going to instruct you not to provide any information based on what your lawyers have communicated to you. Justin, that's okay. My lawyers haven't told me anything. I didn't know anything about it. Shaw, so you're not aware, one way or another, whether anyone on your team has been stoking these constituencies that I mentioned in your favor on social media. I don't know where I would even find the manosphere, so no. Do you think Jed Wallace can find the manosphere? Bach, come on. We got 6 hours and 45 minutes. If you have real questions, ask them. But this is silly. Justin, I have no idea. Shaw, one defendant per deposition, please. Bach, one defendant, but one person sitting here late at night wondering what you're doing here at this point. You're just improvising. Shaw, all right, that's enough. That's enough. I'm going to go off record if you continue to eat up my time. Bach, go ahead. Justin, I'm happy to answer your question. I don't know anything about what Jed Wallace knows or whether he could find the manosphere. Shaw, okay. What do you know about what Jed Wallace does? I know he's very good at compiling information and then sending it, as I believe I testified to earlier. I know he can help. I've had people call me and like leave me threats. I've had death threats, so I know that he knows people in security, so he was able to help me get security. I know that he loves his family a lot. I know that I think he had a health scare, but I don't know much about what he does or what he can do. Have you read Miss Jones' lawsuit in this case? I haven't. Okay, I think that's all I have for you. Thank you. Thank you. Shapiro, this marks the conclusion of today's deposition. We're going off the record. The time is 6:46 p.m. And we're done for October 6th. I'm not sure when I'll get October 7 videos up, but at least we're done with October 6th.